this week's episode of Ushio and Tora. Both Ushio and Tora battle against the vengeful and demonic spirit of an old painter wanting to protect his daughter and to bring her into the afterlife. Before I do my review, I just want to tell you guys that our podcast, The Powerful Nerdcast, is now on iTunes and you can download it for free. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put a link for that in the description box below. If you guys could please just give us a good rating, maybe write out like a quick little one-sentence review about what you like about the show, we would really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Let's get back to the review of Ushio and Tora. Another fun, creepy, and pretty funny episode of Ushio and Tora. What I really loved about this episode is that it almost seems like Ushio isn't even worrying about showing off his powers, because in this week's episode, he reveals it to a number of key characters who are introduced this week. The story this week is that Ushio and Tora were trying to protect this girl named Reiko from the vengeful spirit of her father, who is this very famous painter, and apparently before he died, his wife went off with one of his students. He was guilt-ridden and he was afraid that he was going to lose his daughter, and he was driven to madness. He then transformed or was then possessed by this massive red demon with horns, which lived within this painting of his daughter, and he was going to do everything in his power to try and drag her in and kill her. But Ushio, being the artist and painter that he is, just wants to do a painting of this girl. He just wants to honor her beauty. The problem is Reiko herself is very dismissive and doesn't seem to want to associate with anyone. She's basically constantly depressed all of the time because she's constantly reminded of the death of her father, and that's because she's literally being haunted by him. We are also introduced to this new character by the name of Ken, who's basically like the resident school bully, but he does have an existing relationship with Reiko. In fact, they were actually best friends when they were children, and he was the first one to actually witness her father going completely insane and being possessed by a demon. The actual relationship between Ken and Ushio I also think is really funny, because at first, it just seems sort of like this stereotypical Peter Parker, Flash Thompson scenario where he gets beaten up by the bully, but later on, they actually end up becoming good friends, and that's after they have this big massive fight, and he learns about their backstory and ends up having to help them at the very end of this week's episode. But obviously, the real star of this week's episode, again, is Tora. Tora is really damned funny, and he doesn't want to admit it outright, but he wants to help out Ushio. He claims that's because he wants to eat him and he doesn't want any other demon to devour them, but he always ends up finding himself helping out Ushio, and he can't quite explain why. There's also a few little tidbits more about his backstory where apparently Tora was known as this weird lightning demon in the past, and they go into the whole samurai who actually sealed him away, and then eventually he became the monk and started the Otsuki family, which is of course where Ushio and his father come from, and his father actually does return in this week's episode, and he actually learns that the spear has been removed, and he doesn't exactly take it in stride. He looks completely freaked out, and I was really kind of hoping they would get back to that, because he is clearly going to do some investigating, and he's going to realize that not only is the spear gone, but there's no demon at all, which means it's already been released. But the best parts of this week's episode are definitely the action yet again. There's a scene earlier on in the episode where they tease the demon where it looks like this truck is about to smack right into Tora, but luckily Ushio goes through his quick spear transformation, cuts the entire thing in half, and you can see that this demon was actually just possessing this entire truck. Later on in the episode, the demon goes to some extreme lengths to try and kill and take his daughter, whether it means creating a giant dust storm or literally trying to drag her into a massive painting. And this is where they actually have to fight against him, and interestingly enough, the only way to hurt this demon is when you actually go into its dimension, which is inside of the painting. Think of Viggy from Ghostbusters 2, except a lot more demonic looking. And what's really awesome is it almost seems like Tora is sort of satisfied with the fact that Ushio has been devoured by this demon. He starts to just turn around and leave, but then he gets mad, he gets pissed off, his lightning explodes, and he jumps into the painting, and he destroys this demon, and of course we get a little bit of help from Ushio as well. And this was what I think was one of the more shocking scenes of the episode, and it's also a really important plot point. There's a scene where he's about to kill the demon with a spear, and Reiko jumps in the way to try and protect her father. She still has feelings for him, but luckily, the spear does not actually hurt her. It just goes through her, kind of like a ghostly object, but it still manages to kill the demon. Right before the demon leaves, he takes the form of her father. She has a small reunion with him. It's very heartwarming, it's very nice, and then of course the main characters have to pretend they didn't see Ushio go through this crazy transformation sequence. So what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Ushio and Tora, just another really fun episode in demon slaying. Exactly what I wanted to see from this series, and it looks like little by little we're just going to get more backstory on Tora, where he came from, what his whole origins are, and I think that's the best way to do it, because he's a really great side character. He really isn't like the main star of like the series, but whenever he does make an appearance, it's always really memorable, and it's usually action-packed, and it's funny as well. And his entire relationship with Ushio is also really funny, especially how he actually gets in the fight with the bully at the beginning is because he's actually running away from Tora, who's trying to devour him, and then he ends up getting in a fight. He conveniently ends up meeting his idol, and he wants to paint her. Otherwise, this episode, again, is just demonstrating that the characters are just as interesting as the demons in the show, and on the technical side of things, it's a very nice-looking show. Nothing groundbreaking or anything, but everything's nice and clean and consistent. There's very little reused animation. There's only one scene I think they reused this week, and it's when you actually see the demon's soul, like, appearing in the sky. Otherwise, everything else looks really good and action-packed. There's a lot of great action, especially when Ushio takes on the spear and goes into beast mode. Everything looks really cool when he's like that, and I just love the look of that character. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Intro of this show is freaking awesome. It's got some amazing imagery, some of which is downright creepy, but it's also just really action-packed and gets you really pumped up for the show. Otherwise, this was just another fun episode of Ushio and Tora, getting to introduce a few new characters, fighting against some demons, and learning a little bit more about the backstory of Tora. Just a fun action anime episode that if you consider yourself a fan of the Ushio and Tora manga series, or you've been following this anime right here, definitely check out this week's episode. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. I thought it was a really nice, high-quality episode of the series with lots of great action. But what about you guys? Did you like this week's episode of Ushio and Tora? What did you think of the introduction of a couple new characters and demons? And what do you hope to see from the rest of this demon-slaying, badass anime series? Please tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it, share it with all of your friends, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews, and our podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast, which is now on iTunes. You guys can also follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!